to the B-School budget. I'm Shweta Rajpal Kohli, and today we come to you from the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, or TISS, to get a sense of what the country's young and bright minds are expecting from the union budget. And joining us here to answer the questions of these young and bright minds, three of the country's finest economists with me here. Sajid Chinoy, Chief Economist of JP Morgan. Madan Sabnavis, Chief Economist of Care Ratings, and Vivek Daheja also joins us. He's author of Indianomics and a columnist with Mint. So exciting times really are right now, given the fact that people are expecting this budget to be a big, bold one, a make or break budget in many ways. Let me first try and ask Sajid if he thinks it's going to be a make or break budget. Too much expectation, Sajid, from the budget?
Shweta, expectations are high, but I'm not sure this is a make or break budget, because that would imply that the government doesn't have any other opportunities to push ahead with reforms. I think it's a very important budget because this is the first full budget of this government, and so a very important signpost to what the government's vision over the next 5 years is.
So you're tempering expectations in many ways, so is the government, by saying it's not going to be a make or break budget. But can I, Sajid, ask you a pointed question?
Sure.
Is it one of the most important budgets we've seen in a very, very long time?
It is, for a very simple reason. The private investment cycle now has been in a funk for the last 3 or 4 years. There is a realization that the public sector needs to step in to build infrastructure, which we had not agreed to 5 years ago. How the government does that while still retaining its fiscal credibility becomes the important balance that the budget has to strike.
All right, Vivek, the developments that have taken place politically over the last week or more, couple of weeks, is of course the defeat, in many ways people calling it a humiliating defeat for the BJP, the Aam Aadmi Party's success. Do you think the impact of the Delhi elections in many ways, in any way, will show up in the budget? Do you think there's more pressure now on Arun Jaitley to deliver a great budget, a big, bold, game-changing budget?
I do think so, and in fact, there are two views on this, Shweta. One view is that with the Aam Aadmi coming out of all of these giveaways and promises and so on, that the government will be forced to become more populist and roll back on reforms. But my view is the opposite, that the government knows we can't outpromise and outdo the AAP and the Congress playbook of promises. So we have to press ahead. And I would differ a little bit with Sajid, and I'd say this, if not make or break, but it's terribly important. So it's sort of one shade below make or break. Because if we wait till, this is now less than a year into the government's mandate. If we wait for another year, then we'll be almost at the midpoint. Now, we've got no assembly elections coming up for a few months, but let's see what happens, in Bihar, but assuming that that doesn't go to the polls early. So this is now a terribly important window in which the government can press ahead with important structural reforms and start to kickstart the economy. So I think it's terribly important.
Madan Sabnavis, we always make the budget, many of us in the media also, as this one big mega event. There's a lot of hype around it. But, in terms of actual, room to do things and make those announcements in one day and to be able to achieve a lot, lay down that vision, how much scope does the finance minister really have on that one day to deliver the economic vision and for the country?
No, I think you rightly said that we make a big deal of the budget, but we should remember that the budget is actually a statement of accounts of the government of India. You have expenditures, you have revenues, and you try and balance them. And then you decide as to what would be the right kind of borrowing program, the fiscal deficit, something which everybody is looking at. So it's more a case of doing good housekeeping. And frankly, I don't think that the budget can actually deliver too much in terms of changing the overall fortunes of the economy. Because some of the best run countries like Japan, US, would never had problems if budgets could deliver. And we've seen that Japan has been in a recession for over 20 years. So I think our expectations from the budget to begin with is too high. So what one should really look for the budget is whether they're able to clean up the numbers. When I say clean up the numbers, is that in the past we have seen that we always tend to overstate the growth numbers. We overstate our revenues. We have certain expenditures which are fixed. And at the end of the year, we say that, look, the fiscal deficit is slipping, and let us start cutting back on project expenditure, which is the discretionary expenditure. So if you can get out of this particular syndrome by being a bit more reasonable when it comes to targeting growth and revenue flows, I think we'd have done a fairly good job.
All right, and now we're going to throw open the house to questions. We know there are a lot of interesting questions that we've got coming up here. Go ahead, you had a question to ask. Why don't you ask?
Hello, I'm Suyash. My question is that the fiscal deficit is targeted at 4.1%. That's the point the government is pegged it at. But at the same time, the need for public investment in infrastructure cannot be overemphasized. How does the government walk this tightrope walk, and what is the implications for the government in case it's unable to match this fiscal consolidation, as many economists would want us to,
Sajid, if you could take that one.
A great question. Both are very important points, and I'm not sure there's necessarily a trade-off. We clearly need more public investment.
Right.
I think from the perspective of fiscal credibility, and given our sovereign rating, it's important to go down a fiscal consolidation path. Markets won't care whether the number is 3.6 or 3.9, but if you stick to your original path, so much the better. And I'm not sure there's a trade-off, because I think what the government can do is an asset swap. There are lots of assets the government has.
Sure.
Stake in public sector enterprises, which is less productive, stake in SUTI, spectrum, land. What we should see over the next 3-4 years is a programmatic plan to begin to divest some of that stake and directly plow those resources into productive infrastructure creation.
But we've not seen, Vivek, a very good track record so far. You know, the divestment program was a bit of a disappointment this year. They went ahead with Coal India, but it's still not what they could have done at a time when markets were doing well.
No, I agree. I mean, I think in principle, absolutely right, Sajid, that there shouldn't be a trade-off. In practice, if one can't raise the funds through asset swaps and so on, then you may face a pressure to allow this fiscal target to slip.
All right, the next question there, yeah.
So this is Amit Singh. So coming from make or break to Make in India. See, Make in India is the, you can say, the buzzword in the Modi's government. Without ensuring proper investment at domestic and foreign level, at the same time bringing innovation and R&D in the manufacturing sector is also ultimate requirement. So how Modi's government is bringing the same in this upcoming budget?
All right, interesting question there. Make in India in many ways has become the buzzword. It's the one pet project of the Narendra Modi government that has in many ways resonated with a lot of people. Some are even terming this as a Make in India budget. Vivek, is there room for him to actually give that necessary push in the budget to the Make in India campaign or the entire project?
I think the way I put it, Shweta, is that he has to lay out a roadmap of exactly how are you going to incentivize investors, entrepreneurs. So I think the point that the budget is a book of accounts is correct. That one has to, but it's also a chance to tell India and the world that this is what our roadmap ahead is,
right.
How we'll fix all these structural problems. So that signaling is very important, and that speaks very much to Make in India.
Sajid, how many times will he use the term Make in India in the budget speech?
So Make in India is an outcome, right? It's not a process.
Right.
What you need is what are the building blocks to reach that outcome.
Right.
And I think there are two ways to interpret this, which is important. One is, I look at Make in India as Make India competitive, whether it's infrastructure, labor laws, land, power, so people are naturally incentivized to build here. What we shouldn't go into, and I'm hoping this budget will not have, is protectionism. That you make in India by increasing import duties on goods. I'm not sure the government will do.
Sure.
But that's the other way you can make in India. Let's stick to the former, not the latter.
Right. Interesting there that you don't necessarily want to move into the whole protectionist mindset just because you want people to make in India. Go ahead, you had a question to ask.
Yeah. My question, I'm Shashwat, and my question was about the methodology to calculate the GDP. Because now when you're talking about incentivizing the environment to get investments, we are changing the methodology to the base year of 2012 when the manufacturing was pretty low. So that way the numbers will be very high. So who are these numbers for? Whereas the big numbers will come for private sectors or it's for Aam Aadmi?
Sajid, could you break it up for us? And because people are still trying to understand. You've even got the RBI governor saying, I'm still trying to study those numbers. How did this happen? Why the need to revise the GDP formula? And why has it led to such a sharp revision in the growth rate?
So first, I think let's be clear, because there are comparisons between India and China. There is no malified intent. What the CSO do is perfectly legitimate. Every few years, you change your base year because you want to reflect the current structure of the economy. This time around, in addition to that, they've introduced a number of new data sources which all in theory look very good. They're using a database which has got access to 500,000 firms across manufacturing and services, whereas in the previous methodology you had access to 2,500 firms. You're using access to service tax data, which is a proxy for the services economy. So in principle, these are all very good methodological improvements. As it turns out, the numbers that this new methodology throws up is inconsistent with any other high frequency data you see. So when growth was revised up from 5 to 6.9 in last fiscal year, every other piece of data, whether it's import, credit growth, the PMIs, auto production, in fact decelerated that year. So I think there are legitimate question marks.
No, I agree. And I think just to, in a sense, echo and amplify what Sajid said, I mean, in theory, this is a perfectly valid methodology, but it just doesn't seem to square with other numbers and the ground reality. Two other points on this. I mean, one, the timing of this new statistic is a little unfortunate. Right. I mean, just leading up to a budget, because it creates the sense that things are probably better than in fact they are, in terms of ground reality. So the timing is unfortunate, and of course politics comes into it. Yes. Because of course the new numbers make the last years of the previous government look a whole lot better than we thought they were. So inevitably this number is going to be not just a number, but be about politics.
Okay, the person next to you, you had a question. Yeah, go ahead. Ewan.
Hi, I'm Siddharth. So my question is regarding quantitative easing. So what are its implications for India? Will it throw a big challenge, and how will the budget deal with it?
Madan, would you like to take that?
See, if we look at quantitative easing, we first had it coming from the Federal Reserve, where they started tapering or rather cutting back on the quantitative easing. Now, presently, we are seeing that the ECB has gone ahead with quantitative easing. What this really means is that there's a lot of liquidity in the system, which we all feel that based on our experiences, is that a lot of this flows to the emerging markets, both in the debt and equity segments. So one of the reasons as to why we're seeing a fair amount of buoyancy in Indian stock markets is primarily because of these funds which are flowing. So as long as these funds flow, in fact, when the Federal Reserve started tapering, there was always this feeling that there would be fewer funds coming to India, and therefore there would be some pressure on the RBI to maintain a higher interest rate regime to make sure that the Indian markets continue to be attractive. But today, I think with the easing coming even from the ECB, there's some kind of a replacement supply which has taken place, which probably is very good for the emerging markets.
Hello, sir. My name is Neha. The question that I want to ask is that on the one hand, government is trying to improve the business sentiment in terms of ease of doing business in India. And on the other hand, state governments are talking about taxing the e-commerce companies because they feel that they're losing on the VAT or sales tax. So how do you see that being addressed in budget? And if not in budget, how do you see the e-commerce being welcomed by the government?
Vivek, is there scope for the government to do anything on the e-commerce front? Because that's clearly a question that everyone's interested in. E-commerce, the next big boom, the next big story of India. Or do you think if they just let it be and don't touch it, that's the best thing they can do?
Well, I do think so. I mean, I do believe in laissez-faire economics. But I think the question is a good one because, part of the nature of a federal polity, a federal state is you can't, the center cannot, stop the states from wanting to raise, revenues in different ways. So that does create a challenge. But I really do think that rather than sort of targeting and micromanaging this, let it evolve. I mean, that's how IT grew in India with minimal government intervention. There was some support, of course. So let's not get too fixated on particular sectors would be my view.
All right. I think you had a question on taxes. Go ahead.
My name is Dipali. My concern is regarding Section 80C of the Income Tax Act. Actually, this was revised last year also, and the limit was raised to 1.5 from 1. So shouldn't this be, 1.5 lakhs from 1. So shouldn't it be raised to 2.5? What's your say on this?
What about some sort of giveaways for the people, for the salaried class? Can we expect that to happen? Quick words, Sergeant.
Very quickly, I think in general there's no space for tax cuts here, but what you will see is targeted tax exemptions, exactly like the kind you said, to promote financial savings. What you want to direct more household savings to the infrastructure sector, and you'll find many such examples doing that. But to expect broad-based tax cuts in an environment with such fiscal constraints would be unrealistic.
Actually, my name is Ishwen Malik, and government is too much focusing on the education sector and especially the higher education. But still, the education loan interest rate is more than 10%. So can we expect lowering of interest rate in current budget?
No, I think the decision on interest rates is actually taken by banks. So I don't think the government can have much say in it. I mean, in fact, it's the Reserve Bank of India which decides on what the repo rate is, and then it's left for the banks to decide on rates. So I really don't think that in terms of interest rate fixation, we can expect anything from the budget. And in fact, whatever allocations come from the budget for education is more in the, I would say, in the public education space, where definitely I think the quality is something which can be really debated, whether it really leads to any addition in value in the education system. So I think that's something which will probably continue more by routine, but I don't expect the budget to do anything specific for education level.
Okay, we're running out of time, but let me quickly take some questions from the back row. We've not had too many people. Yeah, we could take 2-3 questions and try to answer them together. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Abhishek. My question is, the whole fight which we had at WTO and which we won, can we see any conversion of benefits in terms of MSP for our farmers?
Okay, on WTO and the impact on prices, all of that, yeah, go ahead.
The first BJP government had very bad track record as far as agriculture sector is concerned. So what would be your expectation from the budget that they would do something for that marginal section of the society? And second thing, I would like to add the hot issue of Narega into our concern, that they are playing with Narega, and you know the fixed cost and the labor cost, they are going to change the ratio. So what is your concern about it?
All right, so WTO, we've got one question, and the impact on farmers, the MSPs, the agriculture sector, quickly, if you could.
My name is Kuldeep, and I want to put up a question like what are the implications of the amendment in the Land Acquisition Act LARA 2013 and the removal of social impact assessment from it, and what will be the long-term effect on the farmers and the economic? The removal was on some key areas.
So all ties in with the larger theme of agriculture, farmers, WTO and the MSP. Sajid, would you like to touch on each of these quickly?
I think there's a broader theme to all these questions.
Yes.
I think what you're going to see is not a government that moves away from subsidies, but tries to make subsidies more targeted so that they reach the intended beneficiary and the leakages are lower. And I think what you'll see in this budget, which will be quite landmark, is a big focus on cash transfers, which has worked beautifully around the world.
Right.
The Bimal Jalan Committee has most likely recommended that you take food, the PDS system, LPG cylinders to cash transfer. So I think you'll see some efforts on that. On the agriculture sector, I think when we talk about public investment, whether it's warehousing, cold chain management, all of which ultimately end up helping farmers, I think you will see investments in that. So I'm hoping that you get a balance between increasing public investment that helps the agricultural economy and making sure subsidies exist but are more targeted to the ultimate beneficiaries.
Okay, we're running out of time. Last two questions.
My question is that within the 6 months of BJP rule, they had cut down on the health budget. So what do you expect this government to do with this budget?
Healthcare, Madan, quickly.
No, I don't think there would be any kind of an increase in allocations. I think the thing is going to be more in terms of, practically speaking, I look at certain kind of cuts and subsidies, Narega programs. That's going to be the practical way of looking at the budget. And I think all these kind of social allocations would definitely be curbed under the new dispensation.
Hello sir, this is Vinod. Election nowadays are fighting on the issues like freebies, lot of freebies. Like people are expecting for free Wi-Fi, free power, and means lot of promises are state governments are making. So how to match budget and all these promises particularly?
Could you take that?
No, I think you raised an important question, and I've flagged this at the outset. I think there's going to be pressure for greater populist spending, but I think it's going to be very important for the center to hold the line. And the bigger issue is no one has really made the case that that higher growth is actually good for everyone. It's good for the bottom 70%. And I think now is the time to start making the case, not doing reforms by stealth, the old-fashioned way, but actually step up to the plate. This is why the market system is good. This is why we have to grow, and this is why populist giveaways are more damaging for us in the longer run.
Okay, I'm really out of time. Did you ask your question?
My name is Aditya. I just want to know what can we expect on terms of labor law reforms in the budget. My question is to Sajid.
Again, the budget, as Madan rightly said, is a statement of account. It's not necessarily the only time where the government can talk about labor laws. They've begun a process, and I think what they've done is left it to different states. That once some states have begun to roll back some draconian labor laws which have hurt the interest of labor more than help it, the pressure on other states will rise quickly, otherwise investment will not flow to those states. So I think the central government is doing the right thing. Set a step back, labor is on the concurrent list of the constitution, states have equal incentive to reform those laws, and I think they'll want the states to drive this labor law process, which will take time. So don't expect a big bang labor law reform on February 28th.
Okay, we're really out of time. I can't take any more questions, but one question to the three guests here very quickly, and if we could keep the answer to literally 10 seconds. The one thing you want to hear or you don't want to hear in the FM speech on the 28th. Madan.
Make in India.
You want to or you don't want to?
I don't want to hear Make in India. I think it's created a lot of confusion. No?
Yeah. So
on a serious thing, I would like to make sure we continue on the FRBM path.
Okay. So continuing on the fiscal consolidation path, that you don't want to hear Make in India.
No, that's a
That's in
like
a lighter vein, yeah.
I want to hear that we'll in fact stick to our fiscal target.
Okay.
That's the one key thing I'm looking for.
Sticking to the fiscal deficit target.
I want to hear rebalancing of expenditures while sticking to your fiscal deficit target.
So maybe pruning expenditure
more public
also?
investment, more directed subsidies while sticking to your fiscal envelope.
All right, clearly pressure building on the finance minister to deliver a budget that will live up to the expectations of the people. As you just heard, students here talking on a range of issues, whether it's Make in India, labor laws, inflation, making sure India is more competitive, sticking to the fiscal deficit target, and a lot more. Will he be able to deliver a please-all budget? Will he be able to deliver a budget that will be one that will be watched worldwide as a reformist budget and not necessarily a populist one, despite what has happened in the last few weeks? Those are some of the questions we'll get answers to only on the 28th of February. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.